We've got 8 or 9 planets, depending on whether or not you're willing to let Pluto go or not. And the jury is out about whether Pluto qualifies. And around those planets, we've got approximately 170 moons. And they're swirling around one star that we call our sun. Well, how many stars are there? CNN published something in their science article, July 23, 2003. Here's what it says. You ever wanted to wish upon a star? Well, you have 70,000 million to choose from. You realize how big a number that is. That's the total number of stars in the known universe, according to a study by Australian astronomers. It's about 10 times as many grains of sand, not as many, 10 times as many grains of sand on all the world's beaches and deserts. That's the figure 7, followed by 22 zeros, or more accurately, 70 sextillion. Was calculated by a team of stargazers based at the Australian National University. It's interesting that they would say that, because you can read in the Bible where God spoke to Abraham speaking about his descendants. He said, I will greatly multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore. So it's interesting that God compares the number of the stars to the number of the grains of sand. The astronomers in Australia say there are more stars than there are grains of sand. When you think about how big space is, I've got a series of slides, I think I showed them once before, that just give you a little bit of scale so that you can comprehend how vast space is. Here's a picture of our Earth as compared to some of the other planets. Most of them are between us and the sun. You've got Venus and Mars and Mercury and Pluto. But then to keep the scale going, let's look at some of the other bigger planets. There you've got Jupiter and Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. You see our Earth down there at the bottom? Just a little bitty ping pong ball. And Mars. But now we're going to look at our Earth as compared to the sun. So here you've got the sun, and I understand that you can fit approximately 1 million Earths. Right now the Earth on that screen, if it wasn't for the arrow, you wouldn't know where to look. It's just a little bitty speck. It takes about 1 million Earths to fit in our sun. Now, our sun is considered a white dwarf. It's a small sun. There are some smaller, but it's not one of the big ones. You go out in space, and as we look at some of the other suns that are out there, for instance, you've got Betelgeuse, which is there on your left, and Antares. And you can see, no, you can't. Our sun doesn't appear. It's about the size of 1 digital pixel on the video projector screen there. So just imagine 1 pixel on that screen. That would be our massive sun compared to some of the other stars. And you see these two? These are not the biggest. There's one that, and these are just the ones that we observe. There's one even bigger that they've discovered now, and it's called Canis Majoris. Is that what it is, Stephen? And that means big dog star. You know, I understand that when we look at the stars that we're observing, we're looking at the stars in our galaxy, which is a spiral of stars swirling through space. And we are in the Milky Way galaxy. Now, we can't take a picture of the Milky Way galaxy because we're in it. But this is a picture of another galaxy you can see out there in space. Gives you some idea. The distance across a galaxy like ours or like this, if you travel the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second, could take like 270,000 light years to get across that. I mean, it's just fabulous how big it is. Now, this is a galaxy. They figure in a galaxy, which is one of these spirals of stars, there are as many as 2 billion stars just in the Milky Way galaxy. There are some galaxies out there that have hundreds of billions of stars. One galaxy. Hundreds of billions of suns. I understand in the bowl of the Big Dipper, When you look up at the sky at night, just in the bowl of the Big Dipper, there are over 1 million galaxies that we can see. Now, this is the observable universe. You start thinking about it, and it just boggles your mind how big it all is. Isaiah 55:9, the prophet says, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And now you begin to get some idea. The closest star to Earth is probably Alpha Proximi or Alpha Centauri. They're about 4 light years away, 186,000 miles per second. You travel that speed. Think about how far you go in 5 seconds. Takes about 8 minutes for the light from the sun to get to Earth because it's 93 million miles away. If you travel 186,000 miles per second for 4 years, then you get to the first star. And think about there being more stars out there than there are, 10 times more stars, they said in Australia, out there than there are grains of sand on all the beaches and all the deserts of the world. I don't know who did the calculus on that, but they must have been sitting there with a calculator for a long time. But let's assume that's true. 4 years, 4 light years to get to the first one. Think about how big space is. Think about the number of galaxies, the number of stars. Now, what we've been talking about, keep in mind, we've been talking about how many stars. Those are the things, the shining things we see out there. Now we're talking about, is there life on other planets? There's no life on the stars. The star is a fantastically hot radiation, nuclear fission taking place all the time. It incinerates anything that touches it. So there's no life on the stars. Question is, are there other planets that might sustain life? When we say there are 10 times as many stars as there are grains of sand on all the beaches and deserts of the world, how many planets are in our solar system? 9 and 170 moons. And some of the moons are bigger than some of the planets, or close anyway. So you begin to think about that. What are the odds that there are other worlds out there that may have life on them? Pretty good odds. You mean the Lord put all that up there just so we could observe it with a telescope? It's just a park for us to walk through for eternity, and there's no other life out there? That through the ceaseless ages in the past, that God, the Father, Son, and the Spirit just looked at each other and the angels? I don't think so. I believe that there is life on other worlds. So let's start at the beginning here. Who made everything? John chapter 1, verse 1, Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He, the Word, was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him. By the way, some people think that Jesus was created at some remote time in the past. If that's true, this verse is not true. If all things that were made by the Word, Christ, then He couldn't have made Himself, right? He's always existed just like the Father. All things that were made by Him, and without Him, nothing was made that was made. Then you can go to Colossians chapter 1, verse 16. For by Him all things were created, that are in heaven, that are on earth, that are visible and invisible. Now there are things in heaven He's created, and things on earth. Whether thrones or dominions, there are thrones in heaven as there are thrones on earth. Principalities or powers, all things were created through Him and for Him. He's before all things, and in Him all things consist. So the ultimate creator of all things that are out there were created by Jesus. Now there are some who believe that we've got a God, and our God is the God of our galaxy, and there are other gods that are gods of other galaxies. And you could eventually grow and be a god of your own galaxy. But my problem with that theory is God knows everything, and if you know everything, you can't learn anything. So the idea of a growing God is a problem.